Hey guys, tonight we're climbing into what might be the most uncomfortable ride in military history. And trust me, the Trojan Horse wasn't exactly equipped with legroom or complimentary snacks. Before we dive into this claustrophobic nightmare, let me paint you a picture. Imagine spending half a day crammed inside a giant wooden sculpture with 30 sweaty warriors. No bathroom, no water, and the very real possibility that one sneeze could get everyone killed. Yeah, you're probably thinking your last flight in economy wasn't so bad after all. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is in your city right now. I love knowing there's someone in Tokyo having breakfast while someone in New York is drifting off to sleep, all of us connected by these weird historical stories that somehow help us relax. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing on a beach near Troy in 1184 BCE. Well, that's the traditional date, though historians are still debating whether the Trojan War even happened exactly when Homer said it did. The sand beneath your feet is coarse, mixed with pebbles that dig into your sandals. You can smell salt and sweat, and somewhere behind you, Greek soldiers are putting finishing touches on the largest wooden horse the ancient world has ever seen. This isn't some cute decorative pony. This thing is 3 stories tall, constructed from pine and fir, with a belly hollow enough to fit dozens of men. You're looking at it now, and honestly, it looks less like a gift to the gods and more like a giant coffin on legs. Odysseus walks past you, his face grim. He's the mastermind behind this whole operation, and right now, he's personally inspecting every warrior who's volunteered to climb inside. This is the Trojan Horse strategy that every military academy still studies today, the ultimate example of psychological warfare and deception in ancient history. But here's what they don't tell you in those glossy history textbooks. The 12 hours you're about to spend inside that wooden belly will test human endurance in ways that battlefield combat never could. You volunteered for this mission 3 days ago, back when it seemed like a clever plan, maybe even heroic. Now, standing in front of the horse's concealed entrance panel, you're wondering if you've made a terrible mistake. The opening is small, barely wider than your shoulders. You watch as the first warrior, a Spartan named Neoptolemus, hoists himself up and squeezes through. He disappears into the darkness, and you hear nothing. That's the point. Absolute silence is the only thing keeping this plan alive. Your turn comes faster than you'd like. You grip the rough wood and pull yourself up, splinters immediately finding their way into your palms. The smell hits you first, fresh-cut timber mixed with the oil they've rubbed on the exterior to make it shine. You wiggle through the opening and suddenly you're inside and the darkness is complete. Not the darkness of a room at night, but the kind of solid black that makes you question whether your eyes are even open. Someone's hand grabs your shoulder, you can't see who, and guides you to a spot against the inner wall. You crouch down, and your knees immediately protest. The curved interior is maybe 6 feet at its widest point, and you can already feel other bodies pressing in around you. There's Menelaus to your left, you think, though in this blackness everyone is just breath and warmth and the occasional nervous shuffle. More warriors climb in. You count them by sound, the scrape of sandals, the grunt of effort, the whispered curse when someone bumps their head. 10, 15, 20. The air is getting thicker. You're breathing in what everyone else is breathing out, and there's a growing warmth that has nothing to do with the weather outside. 25, 30. Surely that's enough. How many men can reasonably fit in here without someone suffocating? You hear Odysseus's voice, low and firm as he climbs in last. He's doing a final head count, whispering names. Then comes the sound that will haunt you for the next 12 hours, the entrance panel being sealed from the inside, wood scraping against wood, the whisper of rope being tied. And then, absolute silence. Your world has shrunk to this wooden womb. You can't see your hand in front of your face. You can't stretch your legs. You can feel someone's elbow digging into your ribs, and you're pretty sure your foot is going numb already, but you don't dare move to adjust it. Outside, you hear Greek soldiers shouting orders. They're preparing to stage the Great Retreat, to sail their ships just out of sight behind a nearby island, making it look like they've given up the 10-year siege and gone home. The Trojans will wake up tomorrow, see an empty beach, and find only this mysterious wooden horse left behind. A gift, they'll think, to the gods. But that's tomorrow's problem. Right now, your problem is surviving the next 12 hours without losing your mind. You've been inside the horse for maybe 20 minutes, and already you're learning things about ancient Greek engineering that no history book ever taught you. Like the fact that whoever designed this thing actually thought about ventilation. Sort of. There are tiny holes drilled through the wood at strategic points, barely wider than your finger, disguised as natural knots and imperfections in the timber. You can feel a whisper of air coming from somewhere above your head, and honestly, it's the only thing stopping this from becoming a mass grave before the mission even starts. The craftsmanship is actually insane when you think about it. This is 1184 BCE, remember. There's no Home Depot, no power drills, no instructional videos titled How to Build a Giant Hollow Horse in 72 Hours. Yet somehow, the Greek engineer Hippias managed to design and construct this 3-story deception using nothing but bronze tools, rope, and apparently a lot of prayer to Athena. Historians are still debating exactly how long it took to build. Some say 3 days, others argue it must have been weeks. But either way, you're currently sitting inside proof that ancient people were way smarter than we give them credit for. You run your hand along the interior wall, feeling the smooth planes where someone took the time to sand down the rough edges. That's a detail that surprises you. Why bother making the inside comfortable when it's going to be pitch black anyway? But then you realize, splinters. If 30 warriors are going to spend half a day pressed against wood, the last thing you need is someone yelping because a shard just embedded itself in their back. One sound, one moment of lost control, and the whole operation collapses. The frame is constructed from interlocking beams. You can feel the joints where they meet, fitted together so precisely that there's barely a gap. This isn't just carpentry, it's architecture. The horse has to be strong enough to support its own weight, hollow enough to hide men, light enough to be moved by the Trojans, and convincing enough to look like a legitimate religious offering. That's a lot of engineering problems to solve simultaneously, especially when your main tool is a bronze saw that needs sharpening every few hours. Someone shifts position near you, and you hear the faintest creak of wood. Immediately, everyone freezes. You hold your breath. But the structure holds. Of course it does. Hippias apparently built this thing with the structural integrity of a warship. The base is reinforced with cross beams, the legs are solid timber, not hollow, and the whole thing is held together with wooden pegs and animal hide glue. No nails. Nails would split the wood and create weak points. Every joint is fitted, measured, tested. You think about Hippias for a moment, the master craftsman who pulled this off. According to legend, Athena herself appeared to him in a dream and showed him the design. That's what Homer wrote, anyway. Modern scholars are more skeptical, suggesting the story might have borrowed from earlier Near Eastern siege tactics involving wooden structures. But sitting here in the dark, feeling the solid craftsmanship surrounding you, you can almost believe in divine inspiration. No mere mortal should be able to build something this complex without blueprints. The exterior, you remember from when you were standing outside, is decorated. Carved reliefs, painted details, maybe even some gold leaf if the stories are accurate. It has to look expensive, like something the Greeks would genuinely leave as an offering to the gods after giving up their siege. The Trojans need to believe this horse is too valuable to burn, too sacred to disrespect. That's part of the psychological warfare, making your enemy want to take your trap inside their walls. But here's something the legends always gloss over. The weight distribution. You're sitting in a very specific position right now, and so is everyone else. Odysseus didn't just randomly stuff warriors into this thing. He calculated the balance. Too many men on one side, and the horse tips. Too much weight in the back, and it looks unnatural when the Trojans try to move it. You're positioned like cargo in a ship's hold, each body strategically placed to keep the center of gravity stable. The wood itself tells a story. Pine and fir, both relatively lightweight compared to oak, but strong enough for the frame. Someone, probably Epius, had to source this timber, season it properly so it wouldn't warp or crack in Troy's heat, then shape it into curves and angles that would form a recognizable horse shape. And they had to do all of this in secret, or at least quickly enough that Trojan scouts didn't report back about the Greeks building a massive wooden structure on the beach. You feel another air hole near your shoulder and press your face close to it, pulling in a deeper breath. The air tastes like wood and sweat and fear, but it's air. Whoever drilled these ventilation holes knew exactly what they were doing. Too many holes, and the horse looks suspicious, riddled with weaknesses. Too few, and everyone suffocates. The fact that you're still breathing means someone did the math on how much oxygen 30 men would consume over 12 hours in an enclosed space. There's a support beam running along the interior ceiling. You discovered it when you first climbed in and bumped your head. It's there to prevent the roof from collapsing inward, but it's also smooth, reinforced, wrapped in leather to prevent noise. Every detail has been thought through. The entrance hatch is positioned on the belly, hidden from casual observation. The legs are hollow at the top where they meet the body, creating additional cramped spaces for warriors to squeeze into. Nothing is wasted. Every cubic inch of interior space has a purpose. Academic debates still rage about whether this horse was historically real or just a poetic metaphor for some other kind of siege tactic. Maybe a battering ram, maybe an earthquake, maybe just good old-fashioned bribery. But sitting here, wedged between anonymous warriors in expertly crafted darkness, you're pretty convinced that someone, somewhere, actually built this thing. The logistics are too specific, the engineering too practical to be pure fiction. Your legs are definitely asleep now, and you've only been here half an hour. You're starting to understand that getting picked for this mission wasn't actually an honor. It was more like winning a lottery you never wanted to enter. Odysseus didn't just grab the first 30 guys who raised their hands. No, he spent days observing, testing, quietly eliminating candidates who showed even the slightest hint of being a liability. Because here's the thing about the Trojan Horse strategy that nobody tells you. Physical strength means nothing if your mind breaks after hour 3. 3 days ago, you watched Odysseus reject Ajax the Lesser, one of the most feared warriors in the entire Greek army. The guy could fight like a demon, had survived countless battles, carried scars like a roadmap of violence. But Odysseus watched him for 2 hours sitting still during a strategy meeting and saw him fidget. Just small movements, adjusting his position, cracking his knuckles, tapping his foot. Most people wouldn't even notice. Odysseus noticed. Ajax the Lesser didn't make the cut. Too much restless energy. That kind of man doesn't survive 12 hours of forced meditation in a wooden coffin. The selection process was brutal in ways that had nothing to do with combat. Odysseus created tests that seemed random but weren't. He'd have warriors sit in a storage tent for hours with nothing to do, watching to see who could handle boredom without losing focus. He'd wake people up in the middle of the night and give them contradictory orders, measuring how they responded to confusion and stress. He'd put men in small spaces, inside overturned boats, beneath supply carts, and observe who panicked and who stayed calm. You passed because, well, you're not entirely sure why. Maybe because when Odysseus stuck you under that supply cart for 3 hours, you just closed your eyes and thought about home. Didn't fight it, didn't try to prove anything, just existed. Apparently, that's the skill set required for this particular flavor of warfare. The ability to turn yourself off like a lamp and just be a breathing statue. The guy to your right, you think it's Diomedes, based on the smell of his particular brand of olive oil. He made it in because he once hid in a well for 6 hours during a reconnaissance mission behind enemy lines. Didn't move, didn't complain, just waited. Odysseus heard that story and immediately put him on the list. Mental endurance over physical prowess. That's the criteria. But here's where it gets interesting and where historians still argue about the details. Some scholars think Odysseus also selected based on social bonds. Notice how several of the men in here are brothers, cousins, or childhood friends. That's not coincidence. The theory is that men who have personal connections are less likely to crack under pressure because they don't want to be the one who gets their friend killed. If you're packed in here next to your brother, you're not going to be the guy who sneezes and ruins everything. The shame would be unbearable. Size mattered too, obviously. You're not a small person, but you're not exactly massive either. The largest warriors, the ones who'd barely fit through the entrance hatch, didn't get picked. This isn't about brute strength. It's about fitting 30 human bodies into a space designed for maybe 20 and having everyone stay functional. Odysseus needed men who could compress themselves, who wouldn't take up unnecessary space, who could control their breathing and minimize their presence. Psychological screening in 1184 BCE wasn't exactly scientific, but Odysseus had his methods. He talked to everyone's friends, their tent mates, anyone who'd spent extended time with potential candidates. He asked questions like, does this man have nightmares? Does he talk in his sleep? Can he control his bladder when he's nervous? These aren't things you'd normally ask about a warrior, but they're absolutely critical when you're planning to lock 30 people in a box for half a day. You remember overhearing an argument between Odysseus and Menelaus about one particular warrior, a Cretan named Meriones, who desperately wanted in. Great fighter, loyal, brave, but he had a nervous cough. Just a little thing, barely noticeable in normal conditions. Menelaus argued it didn't matter. Odysseus said it absolutely mattered, because 12 hours of stress and dust and shallow breathing would turn that little cough into a constant threat. Meriones didn't make the cut. You wonder if he's grateful now or devastated. There's also the matter of trust. Everyone in this horse is either a nobleman, a proven veteran, or someone with a reputation so solid that betrayal is unthinkable. Odysseus couldn't risk someone with divided loyalties or a secret Trojan sympathizer who might start shouting once you're inside the city walls. The social dynamics of ancient warfare are complicated. There are guest friendships, marriage alliances, trade relationships that cut across battle lines. Every man in here has been vetted not just for courage, but for absolute commitment to seeing Troy burn. Age played a role too. You notice there's nobody too young in here. No teenage warriors trying to prove themselves. The youngest person is probably mid-20s, and most are in their 30s or early 40s. Odysseus wanted men who'd lived enough to have patience, who'd experienced enough discomfort that 12 hours of hell wouldn't shatter them. Young men have something to prove. Older men just have something to finish. Religious devotion was another factor, though that's pure speculation on your part. Several of the men in here are known to be especially pious, always making offerings, always praying before battle. Maybe Odysseus figured that men with strong faith could endure suffering better, could mentally retreat into prayer when the physical reality became unbearable. Or maybe he just wanted people who'd believe this plan was divinely inspired rather than completely insane. The rejection rate was apparently brutal. For every warrior crammed into this darkness with you, 3 or 4 others were turned away. Some of them were furious. You heard rumors of fights breaking out, of men accusing Odysseus of favoritism or cowardice. But he held firm. This isn't about glory. This is about psychological endurance, and not everyone has it. You shift your weight slightly, trying to restore feeling to your left foot, and immediately regret it. The movement creates a chain reaction. Someone else has to adjust, then another person, and for a moment the whole interior seems to ripple with suppressed motion. Then everyone freezes again, and the silence returns. 30 men, 12 hours, one chance. Odysseus chose well. You hope. You've lost track of time already, but you estimate it's been maybe an hour since the hatch sealed shut. Your right leg has progressed from uncomfortable to numb to what feels like it might just detach from your body entirely, and you wouldn't even notice. This is the reality of the Trojan Horse that Homer conveniently forgot to mention in his epic poetry. The part where 30 grown men discover that the human body simply wasn't designed to remain motionless in a crouched position for extended periods. The space you're occupying is roughly the size of a modest fishing boat's hold, except a fishing boat wasn't designed to carry this many people. You're pressed shoulder to shoulder with warriors whose names you know, but whose faces you can't see. Someone's knee is digging into your lower back. Your own elbow is probably causing equal discomfort to whoever's squeezed in behind you. There's no malice in it, no aggression, just the brutal mathematics of fitting human bodies into insufficient space. You try to adjust your position, but there's nowhere to go. Moving your left arm means pushing into Diomedes. Shifting your hips means crushing whoever's behind you. You're locked in place like stones in a wall, each person supporting and constraining everyone else simultaneously. This is its own form of psychological torture. The growing realization that you can't actually move. That you're trapped not just by the wooden walls, but by the bodies of your companions. The heat is building. 30 men breathing in an enclosed space generates warmth like a furnace. You can feel sweat starting to trickle down your spine, pooling in the small of your back where you can't wipe it away. Your tunic is already damp, sticking to your skin. Someone near you, you can't tell who, is breathing slightly heavier than the others, and you find yourself fixating on that sound, counting the breaths, wondering if they're starting to panic. Your feet have completely disappeared from your sensory map. You know intellectually that they're still attached to your legs. Still there beneath you, but you can't feel them anymore. The pins and needles phase came and went about 20 minutes ago. Now there's just nothing, a void where your feet used to exist. You know that when you eventually stand up, if you survive to stand up, the pain of blood returning to those extremities is going to be excruciating. But that's a future problem. Right now, you're just trying not to think about the fact that you can't feel your toes. The cramping starts in your left calf, a sudden, vicious tightening that makes you want to scream. You bite down on your tongue, hard enough to taste copper, and breathe through your nose in slow, controlled breaths. The muscle spasm passes after what feels like an eternity, but is probably only 30 seconds. You're drenched in sweat now, and you can smell it. Not just your own, but everyone's. 30 warriors who've been living in military camps for 10 years, now compressed into a space smaller than most bedrooms, all slowly marinating in their own fear and perspiration. Someone's stomach growls. The sound is shockingly loud in the silence, and you feel everyone tense. But it's just biology. You haven't eaten since before dawn, Odysseus's orders. Empty stomachs mean less chance of someone needing to vomit or deal with other bodily functions. But it also means you're all running on nothing, energy reserves depleting, blood sugar dropping. You can feel a slight headache building behind your eyes, the kind that comes from dehydration and stress. Your back is screaming at you. The human spine wasn't meant to hold this position for hours. You're hunched forward, curved like a question mark, and every vertebra is protesting. There's a specific spot between your shoulder blades that feels like someone's pressing a hot coal against it. You want to stretch, to stand, to just straighten out for 5 seconds. But you can't. Movement is the enemy. Comfort is a luxury you surrendered the moment you climbed through that hatch. The psychological weight of immobility is starting to settle in. It's not just that you're uncomfortable. It's that you know this discomfort is going to get worse, hour by hour, and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. You're committed now. You're inside the horse, the hatch is sealed, and the only way out is through the next 11 hours of increasing agony. This is the kind of suffering you can't fight your way out of. You just have to endure. You become aware of your breathing in a way you've never experienced before. Each inhale feels labored, like you're pulling air through cloth. The oxygen in here is finite, being shared among 30 sets of lungs, and even though the ventilation holes are doing their job, it still feels thin, insufficient. You start doing mental calculations. How much air does a man need? How long can 30 men breathe in a sealed space before the carbon dioxide builds up to dangerous levels? These are not comforting thoughts. Someone shifts position, and you hear the softest grunt of pain. Immediately, you feel it. The collective tension, everyone listening, wondering if that person is about to break. But they don't. The sound dies. The silence returns. You're all locked in this together, a 30-person meditation on suffering, and nobody wants to be the weak link. Your hands are starting to cramp from gripping your knees. You've been holding yourself in this position so rigidly that your muscles have locked up. You try to slowly release your grip, finger by finger, but your hands don't want to cooperate. They've frozen into claws. You work at it, patient, gradual, until finally your fingers straighten. The relief is minimal but precious. The darkness is its own character in this story. It's not passive. It presses against your eyes, thick and heavy. You keep blinking, checking to see if maybe your vision will adjust, if maybe you'll start to see shapes or shadows. But there's nothing, just solid, unrelenting black. Some historians argue that the Greeks might have had small oil lamps inside the horse, but you're grateful they didn't. Light would mean shadows, movement, the visual confirmation of just how cramped you really are. The darkness is a mercy, hiding the claustrophobic reality from your eyes even as your body screams about it. You wonder, briefly, how the others are handling this. Is Odysseus cramping too? Is Menelaus questioning his life choices? You'll never know. Nobody's talking, nobody's even whispering. You're alone together, separate and unified. Each man fighting his own private war against his own body. And you've got at least 11 more hours to go. You're approximately 2 hours in when your brain starts playing tricks on you. It begins subtly. A fleeting thought that maybe the walls are closer than they were a minute ago, that maybe the horse is slowly collapsing inward. You know this is impossible. Wood doesn't shrink. But knowing something intellectually and feeling it emotionally are two very different things when you're locked in absolute darkness with no sense of space or time. This is where the real battle begins, and it has nothing to do with Trojans. The enemy right now is your own mind, and it's turning against you with impressive creativity. You start noticing your heartbeat, which you normally never think about. But now, it's all you can hear. A steady thump, thump, thump that seems way too loud, way too fast. You try to slow it down through controlled breathing, but that just makes you more aware of the breathing itself, which makes you wonder if you're breathing too loudly, which makes you anxious, which makes your heart race faster. It's a vicious cycle. The claustrophobia hits different people at different times. You can't see it happening, but you can feel it in the way the collective energy shifts. Someone's breathing has gone shallow and rapid, not quite hyperventilating, but close. You don't know who it is, and you can't reach out to reassure them even if you wanted to. All you can do is listen and hope they get control before panic spreads like wildfire through this wooden box. Historians still debate the psychological profile of warriors who could survive this kind of confinement. Modern military training includes exposure to tight spaces, simulated capture scenarios, resistance to interrogation exercises. But the ancient Greeks had none of that formal preparation. They were essentially running a 12-hour endurance test of human psychology with no practice run, no safety protocols, and zero margin for error. One person breaking could trigger a cascade of panic that would doom the entire mission. You try to distract yourself by counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. You get to about 200 before you lose track and have to start over. Then you try reciting prayers in your head, appeals to Athena for wisdom, to Ares for courage, to any god who might be listening and might care about 30 idiots trapped in a wooden horse. The prayers help a little. They give your mind something to do besides spiral into panic. But then the intrusive thoughts start. What if you need to cough? You feel a tickle in your throat. Probably psychosomatic, probably just your brain inventing problems because it's bored and terrified. But now you can't stop thinking about it. The more you try not to cough, the more you need to cough. You swallow hard, trying to suppress it, and the act of swallowing seems impossibly loud in the silence. Did anyone hear that? Are they all judging you? Are you the weak link? Someone near you, you think it's Menelaus, but you can't be sure. Shifts position very slightly, and you hear the faintest whisper of movement. Immediately, your mind leaps to conclusions. Is he panicking? Is he about to stand up and start screaming? You brace yourself for disaster, but nothing happens. He just needed to adjust. Everyone's dealing with the same physical agony, the same mental warfare. You're not alone in this suffering, even though the darkness makes you feel utterly isolated. The urge to move becomes overwhelming. It's not even about comfort anymore. It's about asserting control over your own body, proving to yourself that you're still autonomous, still capable of making choices. But you can't move. The mission depends on stillness. So you channel that energy into tiny, invisible acts of rebellion. You wiggle your toes inside your sandals, flex your jaw muscles, roll your eyes in the darkness where no one can see. These microscopic movements are the only freedom you have. Your mind starts playing with time, stretching and compressing it in weird ways. Sometimes, a minute feels like an hour. Other times, you snap back to awareness and realize you've been spacing out for who knows how long, existing in some dissociated state where you weren't really present. This is how people survive torture. You realize. They leave their bodies behind, retreat into their minds, go somewhere else. You're doing it unconsciously. Your brain's defense mechanism kicking in. The fear of failure starts creeping in. What if you're the one who breaks? What if, after all of Odysseus's careful selection, you turn out to be the weak link? The shame would be unbearable. Not just for yourself, but for your family, your city, everyone who trusted you with this mission. You grip your knees tighter, using the physical pressure as an anchor. You will not break. You cannot break. Breaking is not an option, but your body doesn't care about your determination. A panic attack doesn't ask permission. You feel it building, chest tightening, breath shortening, a sense of impending doom that has no rational basis, but feels absolutely real. You've heard warriors talk about this, the fear that comes not from external threats, but from inside, from the mind turning against itself. Battle rage is one thing. Battle terror is something else entirely. You fight it the only way you know how. Breathing. In through the nose, slow and steady. Out through the mouth, even slower. Count to 4 on the inhale. Hold for 4. Exhale for 4. Repeat. It works, sort of. The panic doesn't disappear, but it backs off, retreating to the edges of your consciousness where it waits for another opportunity to strike. You've won this round, but you know it'll come back. Panic is patient. It has all the time in the world, and you've got 10 more hours of vulnerability ahead of you. Someone else is struggling too. You can sense it in the quality of the silence, the way the air feels charged with suppressed emotion. You want to reach out, to whisper reassurance, to make human contact that might ground both of you. But you don't. Speaking is forbidden. Touch could trigger a chain reaction of movement. You're all locked in private hells, unable to help each other, unable to even acknowledge the shared suffering. You think about the Trojan soldiers outside, going about their day, completely unaware that their doom is sitting in their city square, breathing quietly in the darkness. There's something almost funny about it in a dark way. They're celebrating victory while you're in here having a silent breakdown over an imaginary itch. History has a twisted sense of humor. Your mind circles back to a disturbing question. What happens if someone actually does break? You've all been told the plan, but nobody's discussed the contingency. If someone starts screaming, do the others silence them by force? Is there an understanding that one life is acceptable collateral damage if it saves the mission? These are questions Odysseus probably considered but never voiced. You don't want to think about them, but the darkness gives you nothing else to focus on. Time continues its weird elastic behavior. You might have been in here for 3 hours, or 5, or maybe it's still only been 90 minutes. You have no way of knowing, and the uncertainty is its own form of torture. You close your eyes, even though it makes no difference in the darkness, and try to find something like peace. You're not sure how many hours have passed when you hear it. Voices outside the horse. Trojan voices. Close. Really close. Every single muscle in your body locks up in a way that has nothing to do with the cramped position. This is the moment. This is where the plan either works or everyone dies screaming. The voices are muffled through the wooden walls, but you can make out the tone. Curious, skeptical. Someone's walking around the horse, their footsteps circling the structure. You can track their movement by sound alone, and you realize with cold dread that they're doing a perimeter inspection. Looking for seams, looking for anything suspicious, looking for exactly what you're trying to hide. One voice rises above the others. Deeper, authoritative, probably a military officer. You don't speak Trojan fluently, but you've picked up enough over 10 years of siege warfare to catch fragments. He's saying something about the craftsmanship, how impressive it is, how the Greeks must have spent weeks on this. There's almost admiration in his tone, which is good. Admiration means he sees it as a gift, not a threat. But then another voice cuts in. Younger, more aggressive. That voice is suspicious. The suspicious one is making an argument. You can hear it in the cadence, the way his voice rises at the end of sentences. He's trying to convince the others of something. Your heart is hammering so hard you're certain everyone in the horse can hear it, certain it's going to echo through the wood and give you all away. The arguing continues. One faction wants to bring the horse inside the city. Another faction wants to burn it right here on the beach. Then you hear a sound that turns your blood to ice. Metal scraping against wood. Someone has drawn a weapon and is tapping it against the horse's exterior. Each tap sends a small vibration through the structure, and you can feel it in your back, your shoulders, the wood conducting the impact inward. Tap, tap, tap. The sound moves lower. They're testing the legs now, seeing if they're hollow, checking the structural integrity. You want to close your eyes, but they're already closed and it doesn't help. You want to pray, but your mind has gone blank with terror. This is it. This is where 10 years of war comes down to whether some Trojan soldier gets curious enough to really examine the underbelly of this wooden monument. The tapping stops. The voices resume arguing. You still can't breathe. Historical accounts vary wildly about what happens next. Some versions say a Trojan priest named Laocoon threw a spear at the horse, and it struck the side with a hollow thud that should have given everything away. Other versions claim Helen of Troy herself walked around the horse, calling out the names of Greek warriors, imitating their wives' voices, trying to trick someone into responding. Modern historians debate whether any of this actually happened, or if it's just dramatic embellishment added later. But right now, pressed against the interior wall, you don't care about historical accuracy. You care about the very real sound of Trojan soldiers debating your fate just inches away. The tapping resumes, but different this time. Harder, more deliberate. Someone is using a spear, you think, poking at the joints where the legs meet the body. You can hear the point scraping against wood, searching for weak spots, hollow areas, anything that would indicate this isn't a solid structure. One of those probing jabs comes dangerously close to a ventilation hole. You hear the spear point slide past it, missing by maybe an inch. If they'd hit that hole, if they'd felt the spear sink into emptiness instead of solid wood, it would all be over. Inside the horse, the silence has somehow become even more profound. Everyone has stopped breathing, or at least it feels that way. You're all collectively holding your breath, frozen in absolute terror, waiting for the moment when the spear point punches through the wall and someone outside shouts about finding hollow space. The seconds stretch into eternities. Each scrape of metal on wood is a potential death sentence. Then you hear something that nearly makes your heart stop. Laughter. Someone outside is laughing, and others are joining in. The sound is moving away. You track it with every fiber of your being, hardly daring to hope. The footsteps are receding. The voices are growing fainter. They're leaving. They're actually leaving. But you don't relax. You can't. Not yet. Because you can still hear murmured conversation in the distance, and the decision hasn't been made final. The debate is still happening somewhere out of earshot, and you have no idea which faction is winning. Are they going to drag this horse into the city, or are they going back for torches and oil? You wait. Everyone waits. The silence inside the horse is so complete that you can hear your own pulse in your ears, a rhythmic rushing that marks time in heartbeats instead of seconds. Your legs have progressed beyond numb into something that feels like theoretical concepts rather than actual body parts. Your back is a symphony of pain, but none of that matters compared to the question of whether you're about to be burned alive or dragged toward victory. More time passes. Could be minutes, could be half an hour. Then you hear it, a different sound. Wooden wheels, ropes being thrown, shouted orders that have the organized quality of a work crew, not soldiers preparing for execution. They're rigging the horse to be moved. You're going inside Troy. The plan is working, but you don't celebrate. You can't make a sound. You can't move. You can only sit in the darkness and feel the horse begin to shift beneath you as dozens of Trojan workers prepare to drag what they think is a gift from the gods through their city gates. You've passed the first test, survived the examination, fooled them into taking you exactly where you need to be. The relief is so intense it's almost painful, but it's mixed with a new terror, because now comes the next phase, the journey through the city, and then the long wait until midnight. The mission isn't over, it's barely begun. The first lurch nearly makes you vomit. The horse tilts backward as the Trojans begin hauling it, and suddenly everyone inside is sliding, bodies pressing together in a new and even more uncomfortable configuration. You brace yourself against the interior wall, but there's no good position to hold, no way to stabilize when you can't see which direction the movement is coming from. This is a completely new form of torture, motion sickness and absolute darkness while packed like fish in a barrel. The horse is moving on wooden rollers, you realize. You can feel the bumpy, irregular rhythm as the structure passes over each one. Bump, slide, bump, slide. The workers outside are chanting something, probably a coordination song to keep everyone pulling in rhythm, and their voices provide the only clue about what's happening. You're being dragged across the beach toward Troy's gates, and every jostle threatens to turn your stomach inside out. Someone near you is definitely struggling not to be sick. You can hear it in their breathing, short, sharp gasps that come when you're fighting your gag reflex. If they vomit, the smell alone could trigger a chain reaction. 30 men throwing up in an enclosed space would be catastrophic, not just for morale, but for operational security. The sound, the smell, it would seep out through those ventilation holes and alert the Trojans that something living is inside their gift horse. The angle shifts again as the workers navigate around something, a large rock maybe, or a dip in the terrain. You slide forward, your face pressing against someone's shoulder blade. Your knee jams into someone else's ribs. There's a collective, silent readjustment as everyone tries to maintain position without making noise. It's like a horrific game of human Tetris, played in complete darkness, while being shaken like dice in a cup. The bumping continues. You try to count the rollers as the horse passes over them, hoping to estimate distance, but you lose track around 30. The mathematics of moving a 3-story wooden sculpture filled with armed men is actually staggering when you think about it. The whole thing must weigh several tons. The Trojans have probably mobilized 100 workers or more to drag this thing, and none of them suspect they're literally pulling their own doom through the gates. You hear the sound change, the hollow echo that indicates you've passed under something. The gate. You're inside Troy. The city that has withstood 10 years of siege, the walls that have never been breached, and you just rolled right through the front door hidden inside a piece of art. The absurdity of it would be funny if you weren't so busy trying not to throw up. The workers are shouting to each other now, their voices echoing off stone walls. You must be in the city proper, navigating narrow streets, pulling the horse toward wherever they've decided to display it. Each turn is an adventure in nausea. The horse pivots, tilts, straightens. Bodies inside shift and slide. Someone's elbow catches you in the throat. Not hard, but enough to make you cough, and you have to swallow it down, convert it into a strangled wheeze that hopefully doesn't carry beyond the wooden walls. Historians have long debated the logistics of this moment. How did the Trojans actually move something this size through their city streets? Some accounts suggest they had to partially dismantle the city gates to get the horse through. Others claim the horse was smaller than popular imagination suggests, maybe only 15 feet tall instead of 3 stories. But regardless of the historical accuracy, you're currently experiencing the reality of being dragged through an enemy city while trying desperately not to make a sound or lose your breakfast. The journey seems endless. Every bump feels like it might be the one that breaks someone's silence. Every sudden turn threatens to dislodge a warrior or send someone tumbling into another person. You're all locked in this together, a collective exercise in controlled suffering, and the motion adds a whole new dimension of misery to the already unbearable situation. You can hear crowds now. Trojans have come out to see the horse, probably lining the streets, pointing and marveling at this magnificent gift. Children might be running alongside, excited by the spectacle. Priests are probably following, blessing the structure, thanking the gods for this sign that the Greeks have finally given up and gone home. The celebration is starting, and you're sitting in the middle of it, invisible and terrified. The horse shifts again, more dramatically this time, and you realize they're positioning it. The final placement. The bumping stops, the pulling stops. You hear ropes being removed, workers shouting final instructions. And then, gradually, the voices fade. The workers are leaving. The horse is in place. You've arrived at your destination. But the motion sickness doesn't stop just because the horse has stopped moving. Your inner ear is still confused, still convinced you're tilting and swaying. The darkness makes it worse. Without visual reference points, your body can't recalibrate. You feel like you're still in motion, still sliding, even though you're now completely still. It's disorienting in a way that makes you want to close your eyes, except they're already closed, and it doesn't help. Someone shifts position, trying to find relief after the brutal journey, and sets off another chain reaction of micro-adjustments. Everyone's reorganizing, resettling into positions that are somehow even more uncomfortable than before. Your left leg, which you'd managed to wedge into a semi-tolerable angle, is now twisted underneath you in a way that's going to cause serious problems in about 20 minutes. You can still hear voices outside, but they're more distant now. The horse has been placed somewhere public, the city square maybe, or in front of a temple. Somewhere the Trojans can admire it, celebrate around it, thank the gods for their apparent victory. You're a trophy in their triumph, a piece of decorative irony sitting in the heart of their city. The nausea is finally starting to fade, your stomach settling now that the motion has stopped. But the journey has taken its toll. You're sweating even more than before. Your muscles are screaming from the effort of bracing against constant movement, and you're pretty sure you've developed new bruises in places you didn't know could bruise. And now comes the hardest part, the long wait until midnight. Hours of sitting in the same position, in this same darkness, while Troy celebrates its survival, just feet away from its destruction. The horse is in position. The trap is set. All that's left is the patience to let it spring. You've been stationary for maybe 30 minutes when the real party starts. At first, it's just background noise, distant music, scattered laughter, the general hum of a city that thinks it survived the apocalypse. But then it gets closer, much closer. The Trojans have decided that the best place to celebrate their victory is right here, around the horse, and you're about to spend the next several hours listening to the world's most ironic victory party. Someone is playing a lyre. The melody is actually beautiful, flowing and melancholic in the way that Greek music tends to be, though you know the Trojans have their own musical traditions that blend Eastern and Western styles. The sound carries through the wooden walls with surprising clarity, and you find yourself following the melody despite the situation. It's something to focus on besides the pain in your legs and the growing certainty that you're never going to feel your feet again. Then the singing starts. Multiple voices, men and women joining together in what sounds like a hymn of thanksgiving. They're probably praising the gods for delivering them from the Greek siege, for granting them victory after 10 long years. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a sword. These people are literally singing celebration songs while sitting next to their own doom, and they have no idea. Part of you feels bad for them. Most of you is just trying not to listen too closely to the individual voices, because it's harder to kill people when you've heard them sing. The crowd is growing. You can tell by the way the ambient noise swells, becoming a constant roar of conversation and laughter. Footsteps pass close to the horse. Someone walking right alongside it, maybe touching it, running their hands along the carved exterior. You hear children squealing with delight, probably playing games around the massive wooden legs. Their parents are likely taking turns posing next to it, the way people do with monuments. Smile for the memory of the day we won the Trojan War. Except they didn't win. They just don't know it yet. Food smells start wafting through the ventilation holes. Roasted meat, bread, wine, olive oil. Your stomach, which has been empty since before dawn, suddenly remembers that it exists and starts cramping with hunger. This is another layer of torture Odysseus probably planned for, keeping everyone too hungry to have much in their digestive systems, but hungry enough that the smell of a feast is genuine torment. You try breathing through your mouth to minimize the smell, but that just makes you more aware of how dry your throat is. Wine is flowing heavily out there. You can hear it in the voices, the way they're getting louder, more boisterous, less inhibited. Troy is getting drunk on victory, which is exactly what needs to happen for the plan to work. The more they drink, the deeper they'll sleep, the easier it'll be when midnight comes. But right now, listening to them toast their survival while you sit in silent agony, it just feels cruel. A speech starts. You can't make out all the words, but the rhythm is unmistakable. Some important person, maybe King Priam himself, addressing the crowd. There are cheers at regular intervals, moments when the entire assembly erupts in approval. They're probably recounting the war, honoring their dead, celebrating their heroes. Helen is probably mentioned. Paris, definitely. Hector, their greatest warrior, who fell to Achilles years ago. This is their moment of collective catharsis, the release of 10 years of fear and suffering. Someone bumps against the horse, actually collides with it, probably drunk and not watching where they're going. The impact sends a small shudder through the structure, and you feel everyone inside tense. But the drunk person just laughs, probably apologizing to the horse itself, and stumbles away. Crisis averted. Your heart rate slowly returns to something approaching normal. The music changes, faster now, more energetic. People are dancing. You can hear the rhythmic stomping of feet, the clapping of hands, the wild joy of people who thought they were going to die and now believe they're going to live. Historical accounts suggest the Trojans partied all night after bringing the horse inside, but some scholars debate whether it was really that extreme or if Homer exaggerated for dramatic effect. From inside the horse, you can confirm it's pretty extreme. A woman's voice rises above the crowd, clear and strong. She's singing a solo part, something about homecoming and peace. The voice is hauntingly beautiful, and you find yourself wishing you could see her, see any of this. You're sitting in the middle of a massive historical moment, surrounded by people experiencing genuine joy and relief, and all you can experience is darkness and discomfort and the growing pins and needles sensation in your right foot. More wine, more food, more laughter. The celebration shows no signs of slowing down. You've lost all sense of time, but the sun must still be up because nobody's calling for torches yet. That means you've got hours to go. Many hours. The afternoon stretches ahead of you like an endless desert, and you're crossing it one painful breath at a time. Someone tells a joke. You can hear the setup and the punchline even if you can't make out the specific words. The crowd erupts in laughter. It's the kind of deep, genuine laughter that comes from relief, from the release of tension, from being alive when you expected to be dead. You wonder what the joke was. You wonder if it was actually funny or if they're just so happy that anything would make them laugh. Children are still playing around the horse. You can hear them chasing each other, shouting in that particular high-pitched way that children have when they're completely unself-conscious and free. One of them slaps the horse's leg as part of their game. Tag, maybe, or some Trojan equivalent. The sound echoes inside, and you resist the urge to reach out and touch the interior wall, to somehow connect with that moment of innocent play happening just inches away. The party continues, and continues, and continues. You sit in the darkness, listening to Troy celebrate its salvation, knowing that in a few hours, you're going to be the instrument of its destruction. The cognitive dissonance is overwhelming. You're simultaneously an observer and a participant, invisible and central, powerless and holding all the power. Your body has moved beyond pain into something like numbness. Or maybe you've just run out of capacity to register new discomfort. Everything hurts, so nothing specifically hurts. It's all just one continuous state of physical suffering that you've stopped trying to fight. Outside, Troy parties. Inside, 30 men sit in silent darkness and wait for midnight. The sun is setting. You can't see it, obviously, but you can hear the change in the crowd's energy as torches are lit and the celebration transitions from day to evening. Voices are definitely slurrier now, looser, less controlled. Troy has been drinking for hours, and it shows. This is good for the mission. This is terrible for your sanity, because it means you're not even halfway through your ordeal yet. The heat inside the horse has reached a new level of unbearable. All day, the sun has been beating down on the wooden exterior, turning the interior into what feels like a bread oven. Sweat is pouring off you in quantities you didn't know were possible. Your tunic is completely soaked through, clinging to your skin like a second layer. The air you're breathing is thick and wet, heavy with the condensed exhalation of 30 men who haven't had water in over 12 hours. Dehydration is setting in hard now. Your tongue feels swollen, stuck to the roof of your mouth. Your lips are cracked and bleeding. Every breath tastes like copper and salt and desperation. You'd kill for water right now. Literally kill, which is convenient because that's exactly what you're going to be doing in a few hours. But first, you have to survive this slow-motion torture of sitting in your own sweat while listening to people drink wine just feet away. Your head is pounding. The kind of headache that comes from dehydration and stress and too many hours of shallow breathing in recycled air. It starts behind your eyes and radiates outward, a steady throb that keeps time with your pulse. You try to massage your temples, but your arms are pinned in place by the warriors on either side of you. Even that small comfort is denied. The temperature drop as evening comes is almost cruel in its inadequacy. Yes, it's getting cooler outside, but inside the horse, the heat has nowhere to go. The wood has been absorbing solar radiation all afternoon, and now it's slowly releasing that stored warmth into the already stifling interior. You're being cooked from all sides, marinated in your own perspiration, and there's still hours to go before the mission begins. Someone near you is definitely in bad shape. You can hear it in their breathing. Rapid, shallow. the kind of panting that suggests heat exhaustion or the beginning of heat stroke. They're trying to stay quiet, but biology doesn't care about operational security. The body does what it needs to survive, and right now, their body is struggling. You wonder if Odysseus is monitoring this, if he's aware that someone might not make it to midnight. You wonder what he'd do if someone did lose consciousness. Probably nothing. The mission is bigger than any individual. Your own vision, not that vision matters in complete darkness, is starting to do weird things. You see phantom lights, flashes of color that aren't real, your brain inventing sensory input because it's being starved of actual stimuli. Sparks of gold, swirls of purple, little explosions of white that bloom and fade like dying stars. It's beautiful and terrifying, a reminder that your mind is starting to fray around the edges. The crowd outside has thinned somewhat. Some people have probably gone home, exhausted from celebrating, ready to sleep in their own beds for the first time in years without fear of Greek raids. But there's still a substantial group around the horse, the hardcore celebrants who are determined to drink until dawn or until they pass out, whichever comes first. You can hear wine being poured, cups being refilled, toasts being made to gods and heroes and the future of Troy. Muscle cramps are hitting you in waves now. Your calves seize up without warning, sending jolts of pain shooting through your legs. Then it's your back, the muscles along your spine knotting themselves into tight balls of agony. You breathe through it, because what else can you do? You can't stretch, you can't move. You can only endure and wait for the cramp to release on its own, which it eventually does, leaving behind a dull ache that adds to the symphony of discomfort you're already experiencing. Historical records suggest the Greeks chose a particularly hot day for this operation, deliberately timing it to maximize Trojan discomfort and encourage heavy drinking. But nobody talks about how the heat affected the men inside the horse. Scholarship focuses on the tactical brilliance, the psychological warfare, the strategic deception. Nobody mentions that 30 elite warriors spent hours being slowly dehydrated like jerky in a smokehouse. You can feel your heart beating too fast, working too hard to pump blood through a body that's running dangerously low on fluids. Your hands are trembling slightly. Or maybe that's just muscle fatigue. It's hard to tell anymore. Everything is blending together into one continuous state of barely controlled physical crisis. The sounds of the party are definitely winding down now. Fewer voices, longer pauses between bursts of laughter. People are getting tired, getting drunk enough to lose consciousness, going home to sleep off the celebration. This is what you've been waiting for. The city settling into drunken slumber, guards posted but not particularly alert, everyone convinced the war is over and the threat has passed. But midnight is still hours away. You check yourself mentally, trying to assess whether you're still capable of fighting when the time comes. Your legs are numb, your back is wrecked, you're severely dehydrated and probably suffering from heat exhaustion. But you've got a sword strapped to your hip, and you've got 10 years of rage stored up. And when that hatch opens, you're going to channel all of this suffering into violence. The Trojans won't know what hit them. They'll be stumbling out of their wine-soaked sleep into a nightmare of Greek steel, and you'll be the one delivering it. A cool breeze must be blowing outside because you feel the faintest whisper of fresh air through one of the ventilation holes. It's barely anything, just a hint of coolness in the thick heat, but it's enough to remind you that there's a world outside this wooden prison. The breeze carries the smell of night-blooming flowers. Jasmine, maybe, or something similar. For a moment, just a moment, you can almost forget where you are. Then someone outside stumbles against the horse again, and the moment is gone. You're back in the darkness, back in the heat, back in the endless afternoon that refuses to become evening, that refuses to turn into night, that refuses to arrive at midnight when you can finally move. Outside, the last stragglers are singing something slow and mournful. A funeral song, maybe, for the Trojan dead, or a lullaby. It's hard to tell. The melody is beautiful and sad, and it makes you think about all the people who are about to die tonight, people who are currently singing and drinking and thinking they've survived the war. You close your eyes, not that it makes any difference, and wait for the hours to pass. You've been inside the horse for approximately 8 hours when your body presents you with a problem that Odysseus definitely considered, but nobody wanted to talk about during mission planning. You really need to urinate. This isn't a mild discomfort or a passing urge. This is a biological emergency, the kind where your bladder feels like it's about to rupture, and you're starting to understand why the selection process favored men with exceptional self-control. The thing is, you're not alone in this crisis. You can sense it in the collective tension, the way everyone has gone even more still than before, if that's possible. 30 men, no water for 8+ hours, but enough residual hydration from this morning that bladders are full and getting fuller. This is the nightmare scenario, the thing that could ruin everything. One person losing control could trigger a chain reaction. The smell alone would seep out through the ventilation holes. Worse, the sound of liquid hitting wood in the absolute silence would be unmistakable to anyone standing nearby. You clench every muscle in your pelvic floor, a level of physical control you didn't know you possessed. The pressure is excruciating, adding a whole new dimension to the catalog of suffering you're already experiencing. Your kidneys are apparently still functioning despite the dehydration, which seems deeply unfair. You'd give anything to have just peed one more time before climbing into this wooden torture device. Someone near you shifts position very slightly, and you just know, they're dealing with the same crisis. The question nobody's answering is, what's the protocol here? Did Odysseus provide containers? Is there a designated corner? Or are you all just supposed to achieve some kind of Zen master level of bodily control and hold it for 12 straight hours? That seems optimistic even by ancient Greek warrior standards. Historical accounts are frustratingly silent on this particular detail. Homer doesn't mention bathroom breaks in the Odyssey. No ancient historian thought to document the logistical reality of human biology during the Trojan Horse operation. Modern scholars debate tactics and psychology, but nobody's written a paper titled Urological Challenges in Extended Covert Operations, a case study of the Trojan Horse. You're living through a gap in the historical record, and it's extremely uncomfortable. You try to distract yourself by thinking about literally anything else. Battle formations. The layout of Troy's streets. Your family back home. Whether you remember to sharpen your sword before this mission. But your bladder doesn't care about distractions. It just keeps sending urgent signals to your brain. Empty me. Now. Please. This is becoming a crisis. The worst part is that you can't even squirm. Normal people dealing with a full bladder can shift their weight, cross their legs, do a little dance. You're frozen in place, locked into a position that happens to put pressure on exactly the wrong parts of your anatomy. Every breath, every tiny movement makes the urge worse. You wonder if anyone has actually lost the battle. If somewhere in this darkness, someone has quietly given up and let nature take its course, hoping the sound won't carry. Hoping the others will forgive them. You wouldn't blame them. You're about 15 minutes away from that decision yourself. The shame would be crushing, but the relief would be worth it. Maybe. Then you remember something a veteran warrior told you once, a man who'd survived being trapped behind enemy lines for 3 days. He said the human body is more resilient than you think, more capable of adaptation than seems possible. He said, when you absolutely cannot do something, your body finds ways to cope, to shut down non-essential functions, to prioritize survival over comfort. You're hoping he was right because your bladder is currently screaming that it's very much an essential function. Another cramp hits, this time in your lower abdomen, and you can't tell if it's from the prolonged sitting or from the pressure in your bladder or both. The pain layers on top of the existing misery. Dehydration headache, numb legs, screaming back, and now this. You're a symphony of biological distress, and you can't even groan about it. Someone's breathing has changed nearby, faster, more strained. They're fighting the same battle and maybe losing. You silently urge them to hold on, to maintain control, to not be the person who breaks the silence with the sound of failure. The collective willpower in this horse must be staggering right now. Every man engaged in his own private war against his own body. Outside, you can hear the party has almost completely died down. Just a few voices now, distant and drowsy. Guards are probably changing shifts. The city is settling into sleep, exhausted from celebrating, confident in their safety. Meanwhile, inside their victory monument, 30 warriors are conducting a desperate battle against their own bladders while trying not to make a sound. You think about the physics of it, because thinking about anything is better than focusing on the pressure. Urine has volume, 30 men, average bladder capacity of maybe 500 milliliters each. That's 15 liters of liquid that needs to somehow not exist for another 4 hours. The math is not encouraging. But then again, dehydration is severe. You haven't had water since before dawn. Your body is probably reabsorbing every drop it can, concentrating your urine to dangerous levels to conserve fluid. This is either going to save you or give you kidney stones, possibly both. The human body is remarkably good at making terrible compromises when forced to. You adjust your mental focus, employing a meditation technique you learned from an Egyptian mercenary years ago. Breathe in slowly. Acknowledge the discomfort without fighting it. Breathe out. Imagine the sensation as a separate thing, something you're observing rather than experiencing. It helps, sort of, for about 30 seconds. Then the pressure reasserts itself, and you're back to desperate calculations about how much longer you can possibly hold on. The temperature is dropping further as true night settles in. The cool air helps a little. At least you're not being cooked alive anymore. But it also means you're sitting in your own dried sweat, which is starting to get cold and clammy. You're simultaneously too hot and too cold, too full and too empty, too tense and too exhausted. Your body has become a collection of contradictions held together by sheer stubborn willpower. You hear movement outside, footsteps but slow and stumbling, a late-night drunk finding their way home, or a guard doing rounds. The footsteps pass close to the horse, pause, then continue on. You imagine the guard looking at this massive wooden sculpture, maybe thinking about what a strange gift the Greeks left behind, maybe wondering briefly if there's anything suspicious about it, then deciding he's too tired to care and moving on. Focus on the mission. That's what Odysseus would say. The discomfort is temporary. The glory is eternal. Easy to say when you're not the one whose bladder feels like it's about to explode. But he's right. You've endured 8 hours. You can endure 4 more. You have to. Failure is not an option, and neither is humiliation. You clench, you breathe, you wait. Outside, Troy sleeps. Inside, 30 men wage silent war against biology itself. The voices outside have transformed into something different now, louder again, but sloppier, more chaotic. Troy's celebration has entered its final, messy phase where the serious drinkers are still going strong, and everyone else has passed out wherever they fell. You can hear someone singing, badly, a slurred version of what might have been a war hymn, but is now mostly just enthusiastic vowel sounds. Someone else is laughing, that deep, uncontrollable drunk laughter that goes on way too long and isn't really about anything funny. A group of men stumbles past the horse, their footsteps uneven and chaotic. They're having an argument about something. Voices raised, though you can't tell if they're actually angry or just drunk enough that volume control has stopped being a thing. One of them slaps the horse's flank as he passes. You feel the vibration through the wood and shouts something that makes his friends laugh. They linger near the base, directly below you, and you can smell the wine on them even through the wooden walls. Sour and strong, mixed with sweat and olive oil and the general funk of people who've been partying for 10 hours straight. More wine is being poured somewhere nearby. You can hear the distinctive glug, glug, glug of liquid leaving an amphora, followed by appreciative sounds from whoever's receiving it. These are the hardcore celebrants, the ones who are going to drink until dawn or until they physically can't continue. Troy's version of the after-party happening in the city square, right next to the monument to their victory. The irony would be hilarious if you weren't so miserable. Someone starts telling a story. You can hear the rhythmic cadence of a practiced storyteller, probably recounting some moment from the war. There are gasps at the exciting parts, laughter at the funny parts, solemn silence at the sad parts. You're listening to Trojans process their trauma through narrative, turning 10 years of horror into something they can package and understand and eventually move past. It's actually kind of beautiful, in a tragic way, considering what's about to happen to them. A woman's voice cuts through the male conversation. She sounds drunk too, but commanding, like someone used to being listened to. She's scolding the men for something. Staying out too late, drinking too much, being too loud. But there's affection in her voice. The kind of exasperated fondness that suggests these are family members or close friends. One of the men responds with something that makes her laugh despite herself, and you hear her join the group, accepting a cup of wine, settling in for another round. The music starts up again. Someone has found a drum, and they're beating out a rhythm that's only approximately related to actual musical timing. But drunk people don't care about precision. They start clapping along, offbeat and enthusiastic, and someone else joins in with a flute that sounds like it's being played by someone who's never actually seen a flute before but has heard descriptions. Dancing. You can definitely hear dancing now. Feet stomping, hands clapping, bodies colliding and laughing it off. The celebration has found its second wind, fueled by wine and relief and the sheer joy of being alive. They're dancing around the horse, you realize, using it as the centerpiece of their revelry, celebrating their survival, literally on top of their doom. The cosmic joke is almost too perfect. Someone climbs onto the horse's base. You can feel the weight shift, hear the scrambling sounds of someone hauling themselves up. They're probably standing on the platform between the legs, using the horse as a stage. Sure enough, they start shouting something, a speech, a toast, a declaration of victory. The crowd cheers. More people climb up. The horse is now a literal stage for Troy's triumph, and you're sitting inside it trying not to breathe too loudly while people dance on your wooden ceiling. The weight of multiple people on the exterior structure is creating new sounds, new vibrations. The wood creaks in ways it hasn't before. For a moment, you worry about structural integrity. Can the horse support a dozen drunk Trojans jumping around on top of it? Hippias built it strong, but this probably wasn't in the specifications. The creaking intensifies, then stabilizes. The structure holds. Of course it does. You're starting to think Hippias might have been the best engineer in the ancient world. More laughter, more singing. Someone's crying now. The happy crying of overwhelming emotion, relief and joy, mixing with wine and exhaustion. Others join in, and suddenly there's a collective moment of catharsis happening right outside your wooden prison. Troy is processing a decade of grief all at once, drunk and messy and beautiful and human. You think about these people as individuals, not just the enemy. The woman who scolded the men is probably someone's mother, someone's wife. The bad singer is probably a young soldier who fought bravely and survived against all odds. The storyteller is preserving memories for a future generation. These are real people having a real moment of genuine joy, and in a few hours, you're going to kill them. The thought sits heavy in your chest, adding psychological weight to the physical misery. War is easier when the enemy is faceless, abstract, just a target. But you've been listening to these people for hours now. You've heard them laugh and sing and cry and celebrate. They're not monsters. They're just people on the other side of a conflict that's been going on so long nobody really remembers how it started. Helen, Paris, honor, insult. It all seems so distant and meaningless when you're listening to a mother worry about her drunk sons. But orders are orders. The mission is the mission. Personal feelings don't change tactical reality. You're here to open the gates, to let the Greek army in, to end this war once and for all. The fact that your enemies are human doesn't make them less your enemies. It just makes the whole thing sadder. The party on top of the horse breaks up as people climb down, laughing and helping each other navigate the descent. Someone falls. You hear the thud and the collective gasp. Then relieved laughter when they confirm they're okay. More wine is prescribed as medicine. The remedy for everything tonight is apparently more wine. A different kind of music now. Slower, softer, someone playing a lyre with actual skill. The melody is haunting and sweet, something meant for lovers or late-night contemplation. The raucous energy is finally starting to wind down, transforming into something gentler. People are getting tired, even the hardcore drinkers running out of steam. You hear couples pairing off, voices dropping to intimate murmurs as people wander away into the darkness. The city square is emptying again, the last of the celebrants finally giving in to exhaustion. Guards are probably still posted, but they're almost certainly drunk or asleep or both. This is exactly what Odysseus predicted. A city that celebrated itself into vulnerability. Outside, Troy's greatest party winds down into drowsy contentment. Inside, you sit in silent darkness and count the remaining hours until midnight. Your body is destroyed, your mind is fraying, but you're almost there. Almost to the moment when this endless waiting transforms into violent action. The lyre player finishes their song, and you hear footsteps walking away. Silence settles over the city square. Real silence this time, not just a lull. Troy is finally going to sleep. The silence outside is almost more unnerving than the noise was. At least when Troy was celebrating, you had something to focus on besides your own misery. Now there's nothing but the occasional distant sound. A dog barking, a door closing somewhere in the city, the faint clatter of a night guard's armor as they make their rounds. The quiet presses in on you, thick and heavy, and you become hyper-aware of every tiny sound the warriors inside the horse are making. Someone's stomach growls. In the absolute silence, it sounds like thunder. You freeze, listening for any response from outside, any indication that a guard heard something suspicious coming from the supposedly solid wooden horse. But there's nothing. The sound apparently didn't carry, or if it did, nobody cared enough to investigate. You release a breath you didn't know you were holding. The wait is the hardest part now. You know midnight is approaching. It has to be. The party's over. The city is asleep. You've been in here for what feels like 17 years, but is probably closer to 10 hours. But without being able to see the stars or hear a timekeeper, you have no way to know exactly when Odysseus is going to give the signal. So you wait and wait. And wait some more, every minute stretching into an hour, every hour feeling like a lifetime. Your body has moved beyond traditional pain into something more like transcendence. You genuinely cannot feel your legs anymore. They're not numb. Numbness implies some kind of sensation, even if it's just the absence of feeling. Your legs have simply ceased to exist as far as your nervous system is concerned. They might have fallen off hours ago and you wouldn't know. You're going to have to trust that they're still attached when it comes time to climb out of this wooden nightmare and actually fight. The muscle cramps have mostly stopped, which you initially thought was a good thing until you realized it probably means your muscles have just given up entirely. They've been locked in the same position for so long that they've forgotten they're supposed to be able to move. When you finally do stand up, if you can stand up, it's going to be a horrifying reintroduction to the concept of mobility. You're probably going to fall directly on your face and be trampled by your fellow warriors as they rush out to complete the mission. Your mind is doing strange things in the darkness. You keep having brief moments where you forget where you are, consciousness flickering like a candle in wind. You'll snap back to awareness with a jolt of panic, certain that you've been asleep and missed something crucial, but you can't have been asleep because you're still sitting up. still in position, still in this endless wooden hell. It's more like micro-dissociations, your brain taking tiny vacations from reality, because reality is currently unbearable. You can hear your own heartbeat in your ears, again, but it's slower now, more labored. Dehydration has your blood pressure doing weird things. Your mouth is so dry that your tongue has stopped feeling like a body part and started feeling like a foreign object. Something made of leather or dried meat that someone stuck in your mouth as a prank. You'd kill for water. You'd kill for anything to drink, even warm, stale water that's been sitting in a skin for 3 days. But you can't have water because water isn't part of the mission parameters, and also because there isn't any. A sound from outside makes everyone tense. Footsteps getting closer. A guard making rounds, walking past the horse with measured steps. You hear armor creaking, the soft jingle of weapons. The footsteps slow. Stop. The guard is standing right next to the horse. You can hear him breathing. Is he suspicious? Did he hear something? Your heart is hammering so hard, you're convinced he can hear it through the wood. The guard shifts his weight. You hear the distinctive sound of someone settling in for a longer stay, maybe leaning against the horse, taking a break from his patrol. This is not ideal. This is actually the worst possible timing, because if Odysseus gives the signal while this guard is standing right here, the whole mission collapses before it begins. You silently will the guard to move along, to get bored, to remember he has other places to patrol. Time stretches. The guard stays put. You can hear him yawning. Is he falling asleep standing up? That would actually be perfect. A sleeping guard is better than an alert one, but you can't tell. The darkness robs you of all context, all ability to assess the situation. You're helpless, dependent on luck and timing and the whims of one tired Trojan guard who decided this particular spot was good for a rest break. Then, finally, blessedly, the guard moves on. His footsteps recede into the distance. The collective exhale inside the horse is almost audible, 30 men releasing tension simultaneously. But you can't relax yet. You can never relax. Relaxation is for people who aren't hiding inside wooden horses waiting to commit war crimes. The silence returns. Deeper now, more complete. The city is truly asleep. This is the dead hour, the time between midnight and dawn when even the most vigilant guards start to doze, when the world feels suspended between one day and the next. This is when the mission happens. This has to be when the mission happens, because if you spend one more hour in this wooden coffin, you're going to lose your mind entirely. You feel it before you hear it, a vibration, subtle but distinct. Someone's moving, deliberately, carefully, with purpose. Odysseus. It has to be Odysseus, making his way toward the hatch, preparing to open it. This is it. This is the moment. After 10 hours of suffering, after a decade of war, after all the planning and preparing and enduring, this is when everything changes. A hand touches your shoulder in the darkness, a signal passing through the warriors, person to person. Get ready. Be prepared. When the hatch opens, move fast but silent. Your sword is still strapped to your hip. You can feel it, your constant companion through this ordeal. Your shield is somewhere. You lost track of it hours ago. Hopefully it's nearby. Hopefully your arms still remember how to work. More movement now. You can sense people shifting positions, preparing themselves, trying to wake up muscles that have been dormant for half a day. The air inside the horse feels charged, electric with anticipation and fear and the desperate need to move, to fight, to do something other than sit in silent misery. A scraping sound. Wood on wood, the hatch is being opened. You see light for the first time in 10 hours. Not much, just starlight filtering in through the widening gap, but after so long in absolute darkness, it's almost blinding. Your eyes water. You blink rapidly, trying to adjust, trying to see anything other than the explosions of color your brain has been manufacturing. Cool air rushes in through the opening. Fresh air. Real air that hasn't been breathed and rebreathed by 30 men for hours. You gulp it down, and it tastes like life itself. Your lungs expand fully for the first time since you climbed in, and the sensation is almost painful in its intensity. Odysseus's face appears in the gap, silhouetted against the night sky. He looks exactly as miserable as you feel, which is somehow comforting. Even the legendary hero of cunning suffered through this ordeal. He puts a finger to his lips, unnecessary, everyone knows to be silent, and begins the descent. Your turn is coming. Get ready. Prepare to remember how legs work. Hope that your body hasn't completely forgotten how to fight. The hatch is open. Midnight has arrived. You watch Odysseus disappear through the hatch, lowering himself with a rope into the sleeping city below. The warrior in front of you goes next, moving stiffly, almost mechanically, limbs that have forgotten their purpose slowly remembering. Then it's your turn. You reach for the rope with hands that don't quite feel like yours, and for a terrifying moment, you're not sure you can actually grip it. Your fingers have been locked in position for so long that making them close around the rope requires conscious thought, deliberate effort, like learning the skill for the first time. You pull yourself toward the opening, and immediately your body protests with a symphony of pain so intense it almost makes you gasp out loud. Blood is rushing back into your legs, the ones that apparently didn't fall off after all, and it feels like liquid fire coursing through your veins. Pins and needles doesn't begin to describe it. This is more like pins and needles and knives and broken glass all at once. A sensory overload that makes you bite down hard on your tongue to keep from making noise. The opening seems impossibly small now that you're trying to fit through it. You contort yourself, shoulders first, trying to squeeze through a gap that seemed much larger when you were climbing in 10 hours ago. Your armor catches on the wood. You twist, adjust, feel splinters digging into your back, and then suddenly you're through, dangling from the rope, legs swinging in open air. The night air hits your sweat-soaked body and you nearly shiver. After the oven-like heat of the horse's interior, the cool night feels almost cold. You can see now, actually see. Stars overhead, the shadowy shapes of buildings around the city square, the ground below, much farther down than you expected. Your eyes are still adjusting after 10 hours of total darkness, everything slightly blurry, edges soft and uncertain. You start lowering yourself hand over hand and discover that your arms are in better shape than your legs, but not by much. Every movement is shaky, uncertain. You're descending down the side of a 3-story wooden horse in the middle of enemy territory, and your body is barely functioning. This is not how you imagined this moment would go. In your mind, you were going to emerge from the horse like a deadly warrior, swift and silent and lethal. In reality, you're climbing down like an old man with joint problems, praying you don't fall and break your neck before you even reach the ground. Your feet touch stone and your legs immediately buckle. You collapse into a crouch, catching yourself with one hand against the base of the horse. Your legs are trembling, muscles spasming, trying to remember how to support weight. You force yourself to stand, leaning heavily against the wood, breathing through the pain as sensation continues flooding back into your lower body. Around you, other warriors are descending, each one moving with the same stiff, pained deliberation. Nobody looks heroic right now. You all look like exactly what you are, men who've spent 10 hours in conditions that push human endurance to its absolute limit, now trying to function as an elite fighting force. It would be funny if the stakes weren't so high. Odysseus is already moving, gesturing silently for everyone to gather. You stumble toward him, each step feeling wrong, like you're walking on stilts or someone else's legs. The city square is dark and quiet. Buildings loom around you, their windows black and empty. Somewhere in the distance, you can hear a dog barking, but otherwise Troy is silent, asleep, vulnerable. The plan is simple in theory. Divide into groups, take the gates, signal the Greek army waiting offshore. In practice, you're about to navigate a hostile city in near total darkness, with legs that barely work and a body that's been through trauma. You check your sword, still there, still strapped to your hip. You draw it, and the familiar weight in your hand is grounding. This you know how to do. Fighting makes sense. Your body might be wrecked, but muscle memory doesn't require functioning legs. Your group heads toward the western gate. You're moving slowly, painfully, trying to be silent while also trying to stay upright. Every footstep is a calculated risk. Your legs are getting stronger as you move. Blood flow increasing, muscles gradually remembering their job. But you're also leaving a trail of warriors who keep stumbling, catching themselves against walls, breathing hard from the effort of simply walking. You pass a house where someone is snoring. The sound drifts through an open window, loud and rhythmic and completely oblivious. Inside that house, someone is sleeping peacefully, dreaming of victory and peace, with no idea that Greek warriors are walking past their window right now. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. This intimate domestic moment happening simultaneously with a military invasion. A cat crosses your path, and your hand goes to your sword instinctively before you recognize it's just a cat. Your nerves are shot, every shadow a potential threat. The cat pauses, looks at you with reflective eyes that seem to glow in the darkness, then continues on its way. It doesn't care about your war, your suffering, your mission. It's just a cat doing cat things, completely unconcerned with the fact that history is happening around it. You reach the gate. There are supposed to be guards here. There are always guards, but you don't see them at first. Then you spot them, both slumped against the wall, asleep or passed out drunk or both. One is snoring almost as loudly as the person in the house you passed. The other is completely still, head lolled forward, weapon slack in his hands. These are the men who stood between Troy and invasion, and they're unconscious. Odysseus's plan accounted for this. He predicted the celebration, the drinking, the exhaustion, the lowered guard. But seeing it in reality is almost anticlimactic. You prepared yourself for a fight, for resistance, for having to prove yourself worthy of this mission despite your body's current state. Instead, you're looking at two guards who pose absolutely no threat to anyone except maybe themselves when they wake up with horrible hangovers. Your group moves to the gate mechanisms, the massive wooden bars that hold it closed, the chains and pulleys that control it. You've studied the design of Trojan gates for years, planning for this exact moment. The trick is to open them quietly, or at least quietly enough that the noise doesn't wake the nearby guards or alert anyone else to what's happening. You begin working the mechanisms, removing bars, loosening chains, each movement careful and controlled despite your shaking hands. The gate starts to swing open. The hinges creak. Of course they creak. They're massive bronze hinges that probably haven't been properly oiled in years. The sound seems impossibly loud in the quiet night. One of the sleeping guards stirs, mutters something incomprehensible, then settles back into unconsciousness. You freeze, waiting to see if anyone else heard. But there's nothing. No alarms. No shouting. Just the continued gentle snoring of guards who trusted in wooden walls and locked gates. The gate is open. Troy is open. The city that withstood 10 years of siege, that repelled countless assaults, that stood as an impenetrable fortress, is now vulnerable because 30 men were willing to spend 12 hours in absolute misery inside a wooden horse. Someone produces a torch, where they kept it during the ordeal inside the horse. You have no idea, and begins signaling out toward the sea. 3 long flashes, then 3 short, then 3 long again. The signal for gates open, city secured, come now. Out on the water, the Greek fleet has been waiting, anchored just beyond sight, ready to move the moment they see that signal. You lean against the gate, legs still trembling, body still processing the trauma of the last 10 hours, and watch as the torch signals the beginning of Troy's end. Somewhere out in the darkness, thousands of Greek warriors are preparing to move, to pour through this open gate, to finish what started over Helen and Paris and honor and pride and all the complicated human emotions that lead to decade-long wars. Your part in this is almost over. You survived the horse. You opened the gate. The rest is just fighting. And fighting you know how to do. The Greek army arrives faster than you expected, materializing out of the darkness like shadows given form. They've been waiting for hours, maybe watching from a distance, maybe just beyond the nearest hill, close enough to move quickly once the signal came. You watch them pour through the open gate in organized silence, thousands of warriors who've spent 10 years dreaming of this moment, now flowing into Troy like water through a broken dam. Agamemnon is among the first through, and you see him pause briefly to look at the open gate, at the sleeping guards who still haven't woken up, at the sheer absurdity of how easily the impenetrable city has been breached. He doesn't say anything. There's no time for speeches now. He just nods to Odysseus and moves deeper into the city with his personal guard. The real work is beginning. You're supposed to join the assault, to move through the city, spreading chaos and fire, to be part of the final violent chapter of this 10-year story. But your body is staging a rebellion. Your legs are still barely functional, your head is pounding from dehydration, and you're pretty sure if you tried to run right now, you'd just faceplant into the street. So you stay near the gate, ostensibly guarding the entry point, but really just trying to remain vertical, while the invasion happens around you. The city starts waking up in pieces. First one scream, distant and confused, probably someone stumbling onto Greek soldiers in their neighborhood. Then another scream, closer, then shouting, the clash of weapons, the sound of doors being broken down. Troy is realizing, moment by moment, house by house, that the war isn't over. It was never over, and the enemy is inside the walls. Fires start appearing. Small at first, just single buildings burning, then spreading as the Greeks employ the ancient tactic of using fire as both weapon and psychological warfare. The flames cast dancing shadows across the city square, and you can see the horse clearly now, this massive wooden sculpture that brought doom disguised as victory. It looks different in the firelight, less like a gift and more like exactly what it is, a trick, a deception, a Trojan horse that's going to be synonymous with betrayal for the rest of human history. Women and children are fleeing through the streets now, trying to escape the violence, heading for temples or hiding in homes or just running with no clear destination. You watch them pass and something in your chest tightens. These aren't warriors. These aren't the people who started this war or perpetuated it. They're just civilians caught in the machinery of conflict, paying the price for decisions made by kings and princes a decade ago. A Trojan soldier stumbles out of a building, drunk or wounded or both, and sees you standing by the gate. For a moment you lock eyes, and there's a beat of recognition. Soldier to soldier, both of you caught in this nightmare, both of you just trying to survive. Then training kicks in. He raises his weapon, you raise yours, and you fight, because that's what soldiers do, even when your legs barely work and your body is broken and you're so tired you could sleep for a week. The fight is brief. He's drunk or injured and you're exhausted and dehydrated. So it's less a battle between elite warriors and more like two damaged people swinging metal at each other. But you've got muscle memory on your side, years of training that operates independently of conscious thought. Your sword finds its mark. He goes down. You stand there, breathing hard, looking at the body at your feet, and feel nothing but emptiness. This is the moment historians will write about. The fall of Troy, the great victory, the end of the legendary war. But standing here in the reality of it, watching a city burn and listening to people scream, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like exactly what it is. Violence and chaos and the messy, brutal end of a conflict that should have ended years ago. There's no glory here, just smoke and blood and the sounds of civilization collapsing. More Greeks are flooding through the gate now, the reserves and support troops who weren't part of the initial assault. They're fresh, energetic, ready to fight. They look at you, covered in sweat and grime, barely able to stand, having killed a single drunk soldier and looking like you might collapse at any moment, and you can see the question in their eyes. You want to tell them about the horse, about the 12 hours of hell, about earning this moment through suffering rather than heroism, but you don't. You just step aside and let them pass. Odysseus appears out of the chaos, looking for his horse warriors, checking on the men who made this invasion possible. He sees you leaning against the gate and approaches, placing a hand on your shoulder. "You did well," he says, voice hoarse from his own ordeal. "You all did well. The mission succeeded." He doesn't say anything about the cost, about what those 12 hours took from each of you. He doesn't need to. You were all there. You all know. The sky is starting to lighten in the east. Not quite dawn, but that pre-dawn glow that signals the night is ending. You've been awake for over 24 hours now, spent 12 of them in the worst conditions imaginable, and you're running on nothing but adrenaline and stubbornness. Your body is going to make you pay for this abuse, probably for weeks. But you're alive. You survived. The mission succeeded. Troy is falling around you, 10 years of siege culminating in a single night of violence, enabled by 30 men willing to sit in darkness and suffer in silence. The strategic brilliance of it is undeniable. Odysseus's plan worked perfectly, exploiting psychology and timing and human nature to achieve what force of arms couldn't accomplish in a decade. Military academies will study this operation for thousands of years, analyzing the tactics, the deception, the execution. But they won't talk much about the 12 hours. They won't describe the physical agony, the mental torture, the brutal reality of what it cost to pull off this deception. History will remember the clever plan and the dramatic results. It'll forget about the numb legs and the desperate need to urinate and the muscle cramps and the dehydration and the panic attacks and all the small, unglamorous sufferings that made the plan possible. You watch the sun start to rise over Troy, painting the smoke-filled sky in shades of orange and red. The city that stood for 10 years has fallen in a single night, and you played a part in that. Not the glorious part. You didn't storm the gates with sword held high, didn't engage in legendary combat, didn't perform any acts that poets will sing about. You just sat in a box for 12 hours and endured, which turns out to be its own kind of heroism. The war is over. Troy is fallen. The wooden horse stands empty in the city square, its mission complete, a monument to clever deception and human endurance. You look at it one more time, this massive sculpture that was your prison and your purpose, and then you turn away. You've got to find water, maybe some food, definitely a place to sit down before your legs give out entirely. The invasion will continue without you. History will unfold whether you're watching or not. Right now, you've earned the right to take care of your broken body and maybe eventually get some sleep. 12 hours in the darkness. One night that changed history. And all you want is water and rest and to never, ever be inside a wooden horse again. The sounds of Troy's collapse fade to background noise as you stumble away from the gate. Your mission complete, your body demanding attention that's been delayed for far too long. Someone, a Greek soldier you don't recognize, offers you a water skin, and you take it with shaking hands. The first sip is almost painful. Your throat so dry that swallowing feels like pushing rocks through a narrow passage. But you drink anyway, slowly, forcing yourself not to gulp it all down at once, even though every cell in your body is screaming for hydration. The water tastes like the best thing you've ever experienced. Better than wine, better than honey, better than any feast you've ever attended. It's just water, probably stale, possibly warm, carried in a skin that's seen better days. But right now, it's life itself, flowing back into a body that's been running on empty for half a day. You drink, and finally lower the skin, resisting the urge to immediately drink more. Your stomach needs time to remember what it's supposed to do with liquids. You find a low wall near the city square and lower yourself onto it, the simple act of sitting feeling bizarre after 12 hours of being unable to move. Your legs stretch out in front of you, and the sensation is so strange, so foreign, that for a moment you just stare at them like they belong to someone else. Pins and needles are still coursing through your feet, your calves, your thighs. Blood flow gradually returning to normal, nerves slowly remembering how to communicate with your brain. It hurts, but it's the good kind of hurt, the kind that means you're still alive and functional and healing. Around you, Troy continues its chaotic descent. Buildings are burning more intensely now, the fire spreading through the city's densely packed neighborhoods. You can hear the sounds of fighting, clashes of metal, shouting, the desperate last stands of Trojan soldiers trying to defend their home against overwhelming odds. But it's distant, happening in some other part of the city, some other reality that doesn't include you anymore. You've done your part. You've given everything you had to give. Now you're just a witness to the aftermath. More of the horse warriors are emerging from the chaos, finding each other, gathering near the gate where this all started. You recognize faces in the growing dawn light. Menelaus, looking as wrecked as you feel. Diomedes, who apparently found the energy to actually fight and is covered in blood that probably isn't his. Others whose names you know but whose features are blurred by exhaustion. Nobody's celebrating. Nobody's shouting victory slogans or clapping each other on the back. You're all just sitting or standing in various states of collapse, processing what you've been through, what you've accomplished, what it cost. The sun rises higher, and you can see Troy properly now. It's a beautiful city, or it was. Stone buildings with painted facades, narrow streets designed for shade in the summer heat, temples with columns that catch the morning light. Gardens are visible between buildings, olive trees and grapevines that people tended for years, growing food and beauty in a city under siege. All of it burning now, or about to burn, or already burned. 10 years of survival, of holding out, of refusing to surrender, ending in flames and screams and Greek soldiers moving through streets that aren't theirs. You think about the Trojans you listened to last night, the drunk singers, the storyteller, the mother scolding her sons, the lyre player with the sad melody. Where are they now? Did they wake up to Greek soldiers at their doors? Did they run, fight, die? Or are they hiding somewhere, huddled in basements and back rooms, waiting for the violence to pass, hoping they'll survive to see whatever comes after this? History won't remember their names. It'll remember Priam, the king, and Hector, the dead hero, and Paris, who started all this by stealing Helen. Maybe it'll remember Helen herself, though scholars will debate for millennia whether she even wanted to be here or was just another victim of men making decisions about women's lives. But the ordinary people of Troy, the ones who lived through 10 years of siege, who celebrated last night thinking they'd survived, who are dying this morning without ever knowing about the 30 men in the wooden horse. They'll be forgotten. Just casualties. Just numbers. Just the price of war. Your thoughts drift, soft and unfocused, exhaustion making everything feel distant and dreamlike. You're not sure if you're falling asleep or just dissociating. Your mind finally giving up on maintaining full awareness now that the danger has passed. The sounds of the city blend together into white noise. Crackling fire, distant shouting, the clang of weapons, all of it washing over you like waves on a beach, rhythmic and somehow almost peaceful despite the horror it represents. Someone sits down next to you. You don't look to see who it is, just acknowledge their presence with a slight nod. They don't speak, and neither do you. There's nothing to say that would capture what you've both been through. Words are insufficient. Language hasn't been invented yet that can properly describe 12 hours of sitting in darkness, 12 hours of holding your body perfectly still while it screams in protest, 12 hours of fighting your own mind to maintain silence and sanity. So you just sit together in quiet companionship, two warriors who shared an experience that no one else can fully understand. The water skin makes its way back to you, passed along by someone, and you take another drink. Your stomach is starting to settle, accepting the water, beginning the long process of rehydration. You should eat something, probably. Find food, restore your energy, take care of your body's basic needs. But the thought of moving again, of standing up and walking somewhere, feels impossible. Your legs work now, mostly, but they're not happy about it, and neither is the rest of you. More warriors are streaming into the city, reserves who weren't part of the initial assault, now moving in to secure the victory. They look at the burning buildings, the evidence of fighting, the handful of exhausted men sitting near the gate, and you can see them trying to piece together what happened here. Some of them probably know about the horse plan. Others might just think this was a regular nighttime assault. None of them know what it really took, what it really cost, to make this moment possible. The wooden horse still stands in the city square, empty now, its cargo delivered, its purpose fulfilled. In the growing daylight, it looks less impressive somehow, less mythical. Just a large wooden sculpture, well crafted but not magical, remarkable mainly for the fact that it convinced an entire city to bring it inside their walls. Years from now, people will argue about whether the horse was real or metaphorical. You hope they decide it was metaphorical. You hope they never know the uncomfortable, unglamorous reality of what happened inside that wooden belly. Your body is starting to catalog its complaints more specifically now that the immediate crisis has passed. Your back is a mess of strained muscles. Your neck is stiff from holding one position too long. Your hands are cramped from gripping your knees for hours. Your feet are still half numb. Your head is pounding from dehydration and stress. You're covered in dried sweat that's starting to itch. You need a bath, probably several baths, possibly a week-long bath. You need sleep, real sleep, the kind where you can stretch out and move and wake up naturally rather than sitting frozen in darkness. But before all that, you need to just sit here a while longer, watching the sun climb higher over fallen Troy, feeling your body slowly remember how to be a body again, existing in this strange twilight state between mission accomplished and recovery beginning. The war is over, the city is taken, the gates are open, and you, one of the 30 who made it possible, are sitting on a wall drinking warm water and watching history unfold while your legs slowly figure out how to support your weight. The sounds are quieter now, or maybe you're just getting used to them. The chaos is becoming organized, Greeks establishing control, resistance fading. The fall of Troy is transitioning from violent climax to occupied aftermath. Soon there will be looting, division of spoils, decisions about prisoners and survivors. Kings will argue about who gets credit. Poets will start composing songs. The machinery of turning war into story will begin. But right now, in this moment, as dawn breaks over Troy and smoke rises into a sky that's turning from black to gray to blue, you're just a man who survived 12 hours in a wooden horse. Your name probably won't make it into the histories. That's fine. You were there. You know what you did, what you endured, what it took. That's enough. You close your eyes. Not sleeping, but resting, and let the morning sun warm your face. Somewhere in the distance, someone is shouting orders. Somewhere closer, Troy is dying. And here, on this wall, you're simply breathing, existing, being alive after 12 hours when you weren't sure you would be. The mission is complete. The horse is empty. The city has fallen. And you, somehow, miraculously, despite everything, survived. Now dim the lights one last time. Let your own breath slow to match the gentle rhythm of morning, and know that history was made not just by heroes and kings, but by ordinary people willing to endure the unbearable for just a little bit longer than seemed possible. Tonight's story is finished. The gates are open. The horse stands empty. And somewhere between exhaustion and relief, between victory and sorrow, between the horror of what happened and the simple joy of still being alive, you find something like peace. Rest now. You've earned it.